We talk about a lot. We get around the strength versus skill, right? And like, what does that mean to a throw? And do we need to be that strong? There's Instagram guys saying if you can lunge 2 times your body weight, you're going to throw 95 miles an hour. And we're like, that's like very eye-washy to a point. There's some value in it, but and again, I'm a meathead by heart. I run a gym with my PT office, so I see the value in strength. But like, in your opinion, and I know we feel the same. Like, what strength versus skill? What's your thoughts? And
so, you know, obviously, I think depending on the age is going to determine the, you know, where I'm at on it. But strength, you need a base level strength. That's without a doubt. All athletes that, like all big leaguers, all college athletes, all pros have a base level strength. Right. I think it comes to the point though where you continuing to get stronger, you know, there's just diminishing returns there. And I think, especially as a pitcher, like it's very skill based. Like, how often can you repeat this pitch to this location of the zone? So I feel like on you know, priority rise, if strength is one, you know, you're missing the boat. Like, you know, when you go home for the off season and you're, you know, 90-93, you know, and you know, you walk 1 per 2 innings, you know, adding 50 pounds to your deadlift or your squat is probably not going to be the best case for you. Right. So I think for us, we just really harp on the skills of the game. And I think we're lucky enough to have college pro athletes that have that base level strength. So I think that we really err on the side of this is a skill. How you swing the bat is a skill. Your mechanics are a skill. How you move, how you execute pitches, and being able to do that day in and day out is skill based. So strength is important. I think it's overvalued a ton. You know, honestly, in my own case, just for, you know, the reason why I'm so passionate about this, because when I was at college, I was 88 to 92, touched at 94 for like 5 years. I couldn't gain a mile an hour no matter what. I did everything strength-wise. Like, I was a pretty good athlete. I really hit the weight room. We started BPC. I quit baseball. I never touched the weight again. And I just worked on my throw for like 3 or 4 years, trying to show other people how to do it. And I woke up one day and I was throwing 98. I didn't touch a weight. I didn't lift a weight. I didn't do literally anything other than throw. And that's why I'm so passionate about it. And I feel like we have guys that do the similar, you know, have the same mindset, and they get a lot better at baseball. Like, this is a game that, you know, you can't muscle the ball to home plate, and you can't muscle it into the outfield. Like, you have to have a good swing or you're not hitting 90 miles an hour. You have to have a good throw, you know, or you can't pitch. You know, working on your arsenal. There's just so many other things that you should work on more than strength. And I think that's, we have a lot of pro guys that are like, dude, I got to lift today. Like, I don't know when I can throw my pen. I'm like, your pen needs to be priority 1. When you're done that, you worry about your lift. And I think a lot of guys can benefit from that. So I think there's all of it is a huge piece of the puzzle. Like, there's so many things that go into it, and I think that's why the evaluation is so important. Like, we might have a guy that is really low on strength that needs to, you know, that needs to get stronger. You know, that can't withstand the whole season. That could add some velocity there. But for the most part, you know, you need a base strength, you need a base mobility, you need to be skilled with throwing and hitting. You know, and you need to surround yourself with people that are smart and that challenge you, and other athletes as well. And I think that's kind of the best recipe. But I definitely think strength is a little bit overvalued, you know, in baseball. No,
and I would agree 100%. I think the other thing with strength is if you're not monitoring, and strength does not make you lose mobility, but it can create compression. So if you are starting to lose your mobility because you're creating too much compression because of the type of lifting you're doing, right, it will make you move not as well. And so at one point does the paradigm have to shift, and who's catching this in an athlete, right? Because if you have the mentality, I'm gonna go throw hard, I'm gonna go lift hard, but like, again, the importance of the assessment of the strength assessment, and that's something we're seeing too. Again, in our college pro athletes, is like they're honestly, most of them, like, they're profiling out strong enough, but what we're seeing a pattern of where they're lacking, or what's most correlated with the throw and what we can affect in the weight room is acceleration. So acceleration's probably more important to those, and most of those guys, you know, and a 20-year-old who's been lifting, who's got foundational strength, but they can't accelerate. So their program doesn't need 5 sets of 5 deadlifts. We can get them on a Proteus or med ball throws where they're fast twitch at a low resistance, and we're trying to fill the gaps of what they need. So no, I agree. So again, Instagram drives me nuts because of the formulas and and a lot of them are strength-based, written by strength coaches, and it's in the older, more mature athlete, it's probably the least important.
Yeah.
At least what I'm seeing.
I would say when we look at the evaluation piece, like there's issues in the mound, on their mound eval, there's issues in their full body assessment, and everyone pretty much meets the requirement for the strength most times. And then that's why introducing the Proteus has been huge, because we always talk about like guys that throw hard are the best rotators. And you can do all the squats and deadlifts you want, like that's not helping you rotate any better.
Right.
And there's definitely ways that I think that we're learning that we take into account that can help that. Obviously you need to be strong, but being able to rotate, being able to accelerate, and being able to use your rotation and acceleration in the throw is what it is. So I think that's why we really harp on the skills, like everything's videoed, how your mechanics like how you throw, how your body compensates. We want to learn, when stuff goes to shit, what does that look like? How do we combat that? And how do we build you out like a routine that you can keep your body in a good spot throughout the year? Because I think that's, one of the biggest things as well.
What do you think as far as like gain and velo? And I know this is kind of a loaded question and people ask you all the time. I mean, again, you've trained some of the best arms in South Jersey history, and you've helped them. Is going along with velocity training, like what do you think is, if you had to name one or two off the head, that like variables that you need to throw hard?
I mean, obviously mechanics are a huge piece of the puzzle. Like your mechanics basically set the ceiling for how hard you can throw.
Right.
That's why we really preach guys to have a really good movement base when they're young. I think that's super important. We get a lot of guys that are juniors and seniors that have really bad mechanics, and it's tough to rep out stuff that they've been doing for years and years. So a really good solid movement base is huge. I think rotation, being a twitchy athlete, being able to rotate, being able to accelerate, and I think there's got to be a little bit of like you got to be aggressive. We see a ton of guys are intent, aggression, like they kind of go hand in hand. But we see a ton of guys that don't even operate at full speed. They don't know what that is. Like especially some young guys. Like I'd be like, hey, throw this as hard as you can, and they'll go 7 miles an hour up. Crazy. Basically because they don't even know, they can't judge the difference between 80 and 100%. So I think, especially younger guys, a lot of guys run into that. But I mean, you need to be strong. You need to be mobile. You need to be able to rotate fast, and you need to have good mechanics. And if there's a one, I would say mechanics is one. But all those pieces of the puzzle are huge.
And that's why it's so fun, right? I say I have the best job in the world, because piecing the puzzle, working with an athlete and like figuring it out, and like again brainstorming. Like I love that stuff. I know our team loves that stuff. We're all a bunch of like dorks at heart when it comes to this stuff. But that's what but I think you're right, to optimize an athlete, you need to have these discussions. You need to identify the low-hanging fruit. You need to have challenge philosophy too at times, and that's having those discussions has been awesome.
I think too, like something that gets kind of overlooked is just the reason I think BPC is started so successful is just because of the environment, like being around people that are better than you. You're constantly chasing something. You're not satisfied with where you're at. And I think that's something as well. Like we have so many guys right now that are 88 to 90. The guys that are going to command the ball at a high level and be 92, 94 are going to be the ones that kind of rise to the top. So I think, that plays a huge role, like who you surround yourself with, who you train with, and scenarios like that matter a ton. Like if you train with a bunch of guys that throw 80, like you're probably going to throw 80. You might throw 85 if you're good, but if you want to throw 90, like you really got to surround yourself with good people that challenge you, people that are better than you, and people that you trust. And that's not just coaches, that's just like players as well. You see a lot of the best college teams and high school teams, like they have a bunch of good players that all want to go there because of that environment, and they bring out the best in each other. And I think that's valuable, to development.
No, and I think something like with Dave too, I feel the same way, and Mike, Ed, the guys over there, like we care, right? Like we care. Like I'll get a text from Mike at 12:30 at night about somebody's arm or whatever. Like we vested in an athlete, and I think that's probably why we all naturally have gotten along, and we see the value in each other, and having coaches that like truly care about your health. Like I know one of the hard things with my job is like I'm the bad guy sometimes because I got to tell somebody you can't throw.
Shut it down.
And I got to talk to a coach, and the coach is pissed because they want him to play, and I've lost sleep over this. Like you don't want to be too conservative all the time. You have to let kids play. Like their body has to adapt, but I got to protect them. Like
at some point, you got to step in. Yeah.
Yep. So I know sometimes I'm sure I get cursed out behind my back. Dad's pissed at me, kids pissed at me, but that's like again something I've come to terms with.
And that's I think that's one of the biggest pieces that we talk about is the long-term commitment to player development, and I think that's what makes us different than most places. Is we're talking about college baseball when guys are in 8th grade freshman year, and that's not just because we want to. It's because that's the beauty of it is that guys get recruited. The recruiting rules just changes, but we would have guys committed at 8th grade and freshmen. So college baseball needs to be on your it needs to be on your mind at that point. And that's the main goal. Like we're not willing to sacrifice a high school outing or a travel ball championship or anything of that nature for a long-term just for somebody to get hurt and miss things down the road. Like we have guys right now that are seniors, and it's like, hey, I got 2 games left and want to help my team win the state championship, and it's like, yeah, that's cool, but playing college baseball, being ready as a freshman, and continuing to advance your career is the goal here. Like we don't want to put you at risk for something that isn't as big as what you could possibly be in the future. And I think that's what's tough for parents because everything's so important. I think that's why travel ball kind of has that aura around it. Like everything's the end all be all. Yeah, and it's like your team, for example. Like we're always talking about, hey, like it's cool. Like they won, they lost. Like we just want them to get better. Like we want them 3 years down the road to be good. And if we can take, if we can put them in games and put them in situations and help them develop patterns that are going to help them down the road, that's the real goal here. Like if they win or lose, no one cares. If you win an 8th grade 11-year-old championship.
My 11U baseball team, I told you, we lost in the championship. Okay. The team we lost pitched a kid, 11-year-olds, 80 pitches the day before, 70 that day. Yep. We're keeping our guys at this point, they're at 45. Like that 150 pitches, like Nolan Ryan probably threw that. But that's an insane amount for an 11-year-old. But there is this culture, and I think we take pride in that we don't fall victim of that culture.
Yeah, like all that for an 11U title is not worth it. Like we want the guy to go to college, get drafted, go to the big leagues. One of those things would be something you might be able to risk it for.
Right. What about like the arm injury epidemic? Like, what is your thoughts? I know, was it Verlander had an awesome his thoughts on it, and this is this talk about a rabbit hole because we don't know, but we have ideas, and I think it's actually multivariable. From your standpoint, like the arm injury epidemic, like what is the main? We can talk about the majors because that's interesting right now with all the UCLs.
Obviously, the worst thing you can do for your arm is throw. That's just a fact off the bat.
It's a tough.
Being a pitcher at a high risk, the harder you throw, the higher the risk is. But I think there's a lot of things that go into it. It's hard to pinpoint, and I think people that try to pinpoint, see one thing but are missing 4 others that could have played a role in it. But obviously, when you throw hard, you're at risk. Two, I think a lot of guys are very underprepared. A lot of injuries happen at the beginning of the season, so they come in, from their off-season workload, and they're not prepared to handle bullpen 2 days off, bullpen 2 days off, inning, 2 days off, inning. So they throw 1 or 2 bullpens a week and then go right into the games, and you're thrown to the fire, and you're competing for a spot, you're competing for a level, and your velocity's way different, and your arm just hasn't been exposed to those factors. I think that's a big one. I think when guys come back from rehab, it's the same kind of thing. Like, when they rehab people back, they just want them to be healthy to get them to the game. And once they get to the game, it's kind of on them to perform. Like, you definitely need to take more of a mindset of we want them to rehab back to what they were prior, not just a healthy arm, but to be able to perform at that same level with the same velocity, the same stuff, on a consistent basis, day to day. I think there's a ton of things. I think, mechanics come into it a lot. Like if you have bad mechanics, your arm is going to take a beating. What we talked about with the pelvis, like how your body compensates. Some guys compensate in a great way. Some guys can throw hard from multiple different slots. You know, good day, bad day, rainy, snowing, it doesn't matter. They're good. Some guys compensate very poorly. So understanding how you compensate and what we can do to fix that. Sure. There's just so many things that go into it, like you know, pitching back-to-backs, you know, pitch count. I'm not normally, like, I think, you know, days in between is more important than pitch counts. Like, how are you pitching at full recovery? Like, you don't see many injuries on, like, pitch 120, but you'll see it on guys that'll throw, like, 2 innings, 1 day off, 2 innings, another inning, like, that's especially so with the young guys. So there's so many variables, but I think our job is just to take everything into everything we can into context, and make the best decisions and try to, you know, minimize the possibility of getting hurt. You know, have a pelvis that rotates cleanly, have good mechanics, manage your workload, but don't undermanage it. You know, and kind of hammer those things. You know, obviously the strength piece. So I think that's all you can do, and kind of go from there.
I'm with you. I think the one thing from my world that's changed, and I'm old, man, I'm 40, but like when we played, and people will say, another argument, but I just don't, again, I'm 40, so I lived a world of, like, we played 20 games. And I was a baseball player, and then we played All-Stars, so maybe 30 total games at 9 and 10. Now we're playing like probably 35 to 40, but there's teams playing 100. So when you start piling that mileage from 8 years old, and I'm seeing this in the clinic, my 16-year-olds, 15, I'm seeing 14-year-olds having muscle imbalances that I used to see at 18, 19-year-olds. So I do think there's this early mileage. So now there's early wear and tear. So it's not necessarily healthy adaptation, because when you're throwing that, they know young throwers fly open. They naturally have bad mechanics. You don't have at that point the strength to hold positions. So, like, again, the young kid that's throwing a ton of pitches, he is gonna have some wear and tear on his UCL, on his rotator cuff, and so when he gets to now throwing harder, like, is there susceptibility because he's already weakened? And I think, but I don't know if we're ever going to change that.
I definitely think, you know, the baseball world would benefit from playing less games when you're younger. Like, is it important to play 7 games in a weekend, or is it important to, you know, build a good movement pattern? Like, they obviously need to play. They need to, you know, learn the game of baseball. They need to be challenged, but, like, you don't need to do that for 52 weeks of the year.
Right, as much as the Yankees.
Like, you don't need to play 100 games in a summer. Like, you need to do that. You need to, you know, play games. You need to learn the sport and obviously be out on the field. But, you know, there's something to be said for building a better swing, building a better movement base for throwers, and then they can, you know, their development process is a much more streamlined, you know, smooth transition. And I think if people played less and trained more, I think we'd be in a better you know, a lot better place as a whole. One of the most, you know, controversial things that we always talk about is post-throw arm care, right? Like, you just threw 100 pitches, your arm is exhausted, you know, your body is exhausted. I think the last thing you should be doing is hammering Ys and Ts and Jaeger band series post-throw. You are tiring an already tired muscle. So I think from our standpoint, you want to regain mobility, sleep, eat, actually recover, let those tissues build themselves back up, and then strengthen it the next day. And I think that's a mistake that a lot of people get. You're just going to continue to add soreness, make the recovery process longer.
Up. We need to calm it down.
So I think that's something that, you know, as a whole we can do better at. Like,
there's some guys that come in and they got like a 45-hour arm care routine pre-throw and after throw. I'm like, whoa, like,
that's harder than your throw.
You're literally, you're tired before you're going in to throw, and then you're kicking your ass after your throw.
And
way too much.
I think too, another thing that we talked about is how, like, your standard arm care program is super overrated. If a regular person comes in there and does arm care for 2 hours every day for 2 months, they're going to go and throw a baseball, and after that day, their arm is still going to be sore. I think there's just different muscles there that decelerate the arm, and I think it's a much better approach to do full body care. It was basically what we call it. So how's your pelvis rotating? How is it, you know, how's it sitting today after an outing? You know, how are you rotating? The pec is a huge one as far as an accelerator of the ball. Like, the arm is just the last piece to throw it, so that takes a beating. But just strengthening the arm, you're missing the full boat on what really balances, you know, your mechanics.
Arm care is the most, and I've used it, but arm care is the most overrated phrase in the PT baseball world, because it's again, it is this such a small piece to the puzzle. If the lower half isn't working, or if the throw stinks.
And I think too, talking about how like if your shoulder after an outing gets rolled forward, it doesn't matter how many Ys and Ts you do until that gets back into a neutral spot, until your pelvis gets aligned, you can't regain full mobility in those areas. So just hammering arm care, it isn't what you need. And I think
counterproductive at times.
Like I think arm care is one of those things where people think it's the solution. Like we've been doing arm care for years and nothing has changed. And we can't be naive enough to think that if only I did 10 more sets of Ys this year, I wouldn't be out for 14 months. And I think we got to really, look at that as a whole and figuring out post-stroke, what are we doing? How are we helping the body? How are we setting our body up, better to throw the next time? And I think that's, going to be one of the biggest things going forward that we do. And I think that's helped a lot of our athletes.
Agreed. And then that second day, like if you had a hard outing, and this is my opinion, chime in if you disagree. If you had a hard outing that night, like Mike said, sleep, eat well, hydrate, relax, calm your nervous system, read a book. You know what I mean? Calm, watch Netflix, chill. The next day, assess your soreness, right? We know when you throw, you lose shoulder range of motion. You lose your rib cage changes position, right? Transiently your strength is down. Again, dictated probably by rib cage and pelvic positions. So what that next day I want my athletes to do is now, like, we want to recover. So now we want to start maybe our positional breathing techniques to improve rib cage position, rotator cuff activation. So maybe if it was maybe isometrics to get the rotator cuff fire after we improve pelvic position back to where they should be, and then work on hip mobility. So we want to restore the things we know that are lost naturally during the throw, but I'm probably going to do it the next day. And if they're super duper sore, right, if they're not that sore, it's not that hard, maybe we'd go eccentric strengthening. But again, we're going to get mobility back, we're going to get the body recover. That's when soft tissue work, I think, can play a value. Dry needling can play a value just to bring blood to the area to help with recovery. But yeah, the beat the crap out of yourself after you just beat your crap out of yourself same night is it doesn't make sense to me.
And I think too, like, just understanding what moves the arm. Like your pelvis controls the body, like your body moves the arm. So if you address your body, if you address pieces of that puzzle that help you rotate cleaner, that help you move better, you're going to alleviate stress on the arm.
Absolutely.
And I think too, like we always talk about, they came in like their arm raise wasn't strong. And what do you call that?
External rotation.
Strength when you're doing the ER test on them, a lot of times they struggle, and it's not as easy as just doing 2 sets of 20 and you build that strength up. Like the shoulder needs to be in a position to be strong, and how you throw. So I think position
dictates mobility and strength.
And when you're done, you got a sore arm and your shoulder sitting like this, and you're just doing that. Like you're only doing more harm than good.
You're jamming a muscle that's eccentrically oriented. Like you're not going to get it there. And that is like something I'm so passionate about, and it's so missed still. And it's something, again, I think we've been blessed to work with a lot of athletes. I didn't know this when I started. We've evolved, we've seen patterns, we've learned, we've changed. We'll probably change again because that's part of being a dynamic system and getting better. But no, agreed. So a lot of I think a lot of guys, again, competitors and I'm learning this in business, is if I do more, it's better. And a lot of times it's not, it just works smarter, not harder.
Talk about arm injuries. Like I think we're way too naive if we really think that not doing 2 sets of 10 Ys and Ts this week cause us to tear our UCL.
It's insane.
We really need to look at the entire body. You need to understand how you're moving. You need to understand what helps spread stress out efficiently through the body, and take some of that off the arm. Like if your pelvis isn't rotating, your arm's going to take a beating there. Your body's going to find other ways to do it, and those aren't always the best ways. So I think after outings, just going and hammering arm care, you're kind of doing more harm than good. So I think just being able to understand there's so many pieces to this puzzle, and not just having a strong ER with a banded ER and Ys and Ts is really going to keep you healthy. Like there's a lot more that goes to this, and if there wasn't, everyone does that already. We would already have solved this problem. So I think understanding that there's a full body approach to how you throw, how you stay healthy, how you move efficiently, and how you perform and how you stay on the field. I think that's a much better way to look at it. And we don't have all the answers to what that is, but I think we can minimize the chances of injury if we take all that into account, and not just your standard, arm exercises.
Agreed.
Well, I'm in the studio with Mike Adams, and man, you got a crazy story. I mean, I thought, I know people's crazy stories, but there's a movie called The Rookie with Dennis Quaid, and I'm sure you've heard this a million times, but it mimics exactly what you have done with your life and your career as a pro baseball player. But I think even more proudly, you've opened one of the most significant, most attractive baseball performance places in America, which is really cool. I admire what you guys have done. I've coached you in the past. I admire what you guys have done with technology, with actually you're almost the perfect vortex between caring, which is a big one people don't understand about. It's a huge one with coaching, technology, personal knowledge of how to do it, and your own application to the craft. It's unbelievable what you guys have done. Social media, I think social media, you're not just good at social media. What you got going on is good, and it shows through social media. So anyway, if you want to talk about the birth of that story and how that relates to the movie The Rookie, it's a great story. Needs to be heard. You'll be the next one on Joe Rogan. So
so I went to Wagner College. It was the only D1 offer I got. I went there mostly as a shortstop, and they said, you have a good arm, maybe you'll be a pitcher. We got up there. A couple guys got hurt. They said, hey, you're a pitcher now. I was pretty bad. I started every weekend. I had good stuff. There was potential there. It never really panned out at all. So I was a draft prospect when I was there. Didn't get drafted. Didn't really get close, honestly. Went to play 1 year of indie ball. Had no success. So, and then after that, I kind of went home. My partner Ed and I were both in the same town. We used to work out together. Over the winter when we were home for college, and it was a hassle. It's cold in the Northeast. There's nowhere to go. We would pay $40 a day to use a cage, and it was just terrible. And we would always kind of had this idea hey, we need to start a facility in our own area. My dad and my grandfather were we were blessed enough to be able to use their the Ken Adams Oil Company. They have a storage building, so we kind of started there with his brother and a couple of his friends early on, just a couple guys in the garage. A lot of people hated our ideas. A lot of people weren't open to the new way of baseball, and we were kind of the first people here on the scene that did things differently. Luckily, we were both good players in the area. We both had a pretty good reputation, so we started to accumulate some guys, which was good. And then we kind of built the business from there through social media, just helping guys get better. We were just our only goal was to help players get better, and we hammered player development. And then I basically quit doing anything baseball. I didn't work out, I didn't do anything. I played in the men's league here and there, but over the years, we had a couple good arms, and we just started to study how the body moved, how you were supposed to throw, different types of body types, and what goes with all that. So I kind of just used myself a little bit as a guinea pig. I would try to demo drills for guys, and I wanted to make sure that what I was doing was right, and what I was showing them was a good example of how it was supposed to be done. And I was I can't teach them how to do this without having done it. So a couple years went by, maybe 3 years. I hadn't done anything, touched a weight. I hadn't really been on a throwing program at all. And, I kind of threw a bullpen and was throwing 96, which was, I was probably 88 to 93 in college, which was crazy hard for me. And I was this is stupid. I'm doing less, but getting way better. We actually got a couple of my buddies were training with us at the time, Nolan Long, Ben Ruda, and Brett Kennedy. So I went to college with two of them, and one from Atlantic City around here I play with. And they were dude, you should go to this workout. People might want you. I'm dude, I'm 5'11", I have a career 7 ERA. I haven't played baseball in 3 years. No one is gonna want that. Baseball continues to get smaller. The chances of me getting signed are it's just a waste of time. Luckily, the event that we went to was up at MSI, and they borrowed our TrackMan for the event. He was hey, why don't we just let you throw for free for letting us use the TrackMan? And I'm all right, I guess so. So I found out 2 weeks prior, and I was you know what, I guess I'll throw for a couple weeks, take this serious, see what happens. So I go up there, and we normally go to this event for all our high school guys that throw. It's all scouts that would are all draft scouts that look at high school guys for the draft. So they're all up there. We watch all of our guys throw. I'm like one of the last ones, and I go up there. They have a TrackMan, but I can't really see how hard I'm throwing or anything. So I get up there and I'm throwing, and the place is just like pitch quiet. I threw really well, threw a ton of strikes. Had no idea. Like the one time I was looking back and I see one of the guys like going like this. I was like, damn, I guess I'm not throwing that hard. But he was saying that because I threw every fastball like 98. So he was like trying to get me to throw 100, and I didn't even really know. So I threw there, threw well, and I had like 10 contract offers within like 3 hours after that. So I went from like not even playing to just being like, I guess, a highly touted like free agent, which is crazy. It kind of turned my life completely upside down. I wasn't trying to make a comeback. I wasn't trying to play. I was just trying to help other people. And I guess that's kind of how life goes. Like the more impact you make, the better things that happen. And that's kind of how it happened. So I ended up signing with the Phillies, which is, being from South Jersey, I was a diehard Phillies fan like my whole life. And being able to play with them was crazy. So got to go down to spring training, like through to JT Real Muto in like one of the first games. I was like, I don't even know how this happened, how I even got here. Like I hadn't been playing at all. So yeah, that's kind of the story, and it was crazy. And I played with them for a couple years in AA, AAA. Like had a solid career. So yeah, it kind of flipped my life upside down.
It's so cool. I know the story very well. Yeah. I tell it, but when I hear it coming from you, I got chills. I just got chills. Yeah. But a neat thing is how I started Klemic Performance Method too. It had a lot to do with my processes, because I was going to be a physical therapist too. The process that I went to the NFL Combine, so I had some baseline numbers. Yep. Broke my leg in a game, but because I had my baseline numbers, I knew what I needed to get back to. They sent me to physical therapists, the best that there is in Birmingham, Alabama. Kevin Neal. I went to, then they sent me to a specialist. Same specialist that I went to train for the NFL Combine. The NFL sent me over to him, Chip Smith, to prepare and get myself back from physical therapy to running basically the times that I could, pre-NFL or at the NFL Combine. So I documented every single bit of the process. I obsessed over it completely, and I got myself back to a position not as good as I once was, but I could run a workout like it's like the songs. I am not as good as I once was, but I'm as good once as I ever was. Yeah. So I tricked everybody into signing me. You know what I mean? I went to Denver, Green Bay. I went to Pittsburgh. I did the best workout I did. I did one in Kansas City. The best one I did was in Denver. And I was putting up numbers that like everyone was super impressed with. I got more contracts post leg break. Yeah. So that's kind of like, it was neat. And then during that process, I knew, and there's a book called The Obstacle is the Way. And that's kind of how I was like, I saw the obstacle, overcame it, and I knew that my career was going to be this, and it wasn't going to be physical therapy after all. I knew this was what I was going to do for the rest of my life. So it's kind of neat. We have these kind of paralleled little sort of, but your story, man, it's still like, to this day, it's one of the neatest stories of like the South Jersey area. It's a legendary story. I'm so glad to have you here, and that we work together, and you work with Ryan Buccafurni, who is just a phenomenal resource for all of us. You, us, the fact that we have a physical therapist that solely focuses on the athlete, I can't tell you how helpful that is. Our kids, I would say 80% of the time we put a kid through a mesocycle, 12 weeks. They're going to get hurt at some point during this. Something's going to bother them, and I got a guy. I got the corner guy for us. He gets right back. We got a direct line to him. With my guys, I know he's super busy, but he'll always take my call. He's got a spot in the studio, every week. So we love him to death. But I'm so proud of what you guys have done at BPC, and how you've brought. We always, everything that we focus on down here is on Philadelphia. Everything's in Philly. BPC, Ryan Buccafurni, and I humbly say myself, we pull everyone from Philly down here. And I don't know of any other organization besides the Boardwalk in Ocean City that can do that. That's it. It's just us. No one's coming down here.
It's definitely it's awesome. There's so much talent in South Jersey. I feel like we've known that for a while. There wasn't a major Division I school that would take all the kids from here, so a lot of people got overlooked. It's been awesome for us to just see the growth of not even just baseball, but all the sports and all the people down here. it's been cool to see. Like when I was in high school, I think there was 5 Division I guys, in that were going Division I in my senior class, and now every high school has like 5. So just the way South Jersey is going, like in all sports, it's becoming like a hotbed for athletes, which is which is what it should have been. And obviously Mike Trout kind of started that a lot. Like once they found him here, like every scout made sure that they don't want to miss the next Mike Trout. And then obviously you have Chase and you have guys like that are kind of really building a name for South Jersey, and it's sweet to see.
Yeah, and a real big reason for that is you wagged that dog. That was coming from you. Oh, you guys are the ones putting that out all the time. So it's not that they just showed up.
Yeah.
You baseball players, in my opinion, are the most built athletes. You have to build that skill. It's not you're born with that. You have to build that skill from a young age. There's no way you can get to the game and just go, hey, I'm going to start throwing a basable now. Figure it out. Can't do it.
Yeah,
you can do that with football. Yeah. You can't do that with
very skill based.
If
you're not skilled, like you're gonna struggle.
Right.
I think that's why why places like this, why places like us do well, just because years ago the best way to prepare for another sport was by playing another sport. So like if you're a football player, like playing basketball in the winter was like probably the best thing you could do. Same thing for baseball. Mm-hmm. But now just with facilities and with the knowledge and the technology, like we've developed ways that can directly make people better. And instead of just guessing all the time, like, hey, we know X, Y, and Z works, like, let's do this. And kids will start to get better. Like you get guys that, start training earlier, and they just develop skills so much earlier. They develop their bodies earlier, and they just become better athletes. And it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I watch what you guys do, and we're so parallel, and I think that is what creates success in our program too. Yeah. You guys do an analysis. Your movement analysis. We call it a gait analysis. We're 360-degree movement analysis when we take their measurements. And then from that, now we have a baseline to draw our conclusions from. We can write programming based on those movements that are going to correct biomechanics. They're also going to create more power within certain movements that are KPIs or key performance indicators that are going to create the faster athlete. It's so similar, and I mean, you guys have super high-tech equipment, and we have it now. I think baseball is the only thing right now that does more technology than we do, and we have a lot. You guys have more than us, and that Proteus is stupid cool. Yeah, that is stupid cool. Yeah, I love that thing.
We've been lucky just to have it for the last like 2 months to just test it out ourselves, like figure out what we're looking for. But yeah, baseball is so analytically driven. Like teams don't make decisions without numbers backing it up. So it's something that, you got to be open to, you got to adapt to it, and you got to use it to your advantage. And I think that's the biggest thing.
Well, everything has always been measured in planes, and this is the only one that's rotationally that I've ever seen analyze rotational movement, which is super important in every sport. It's so important. So I don't know of anyone else that has one besides Ryan and you guys.
Like anyone other, and nobody in Jersey, right?
No. So it's neat. We actually have a machine. I'm going to plug this too. We have a commercial that we do for a Tracer company where it reads all biomechanics instantly and creates a report. That is something that we barely understand right now. I use that machine to create our jump programming, and that's become one of the marquee things that we do now is how we increase vertical leap so much. A normal program will create 3-4 inches over 12 weeks. Our average for girls is 6 inches. Boys is 8 inches. It's insane what we get out of it because of using the Tracer and figuring out all the analytics of the speed of movements and how that really correlates to how high you can jump and how correcting amortization times and valgus varus angling live. You're able to see it and report it. And if it's off, you fix them right away. So it's so neat that we have these parallels. But man, I'm ecstatic. I finally got you in the studio here.
I mean, it's been a long time coming.
I know. We'll do it again real soon too. I appreciate it. And from Klemic Performance Method, I'm Dave Klemic. I'm here in the studio sitting shotgun with Mike Adams from BPC.